What has been your experience then, Andrew? Like if you were to look at best in class companies, right? How do they sustain it? In other words, you obviously touched upon the culture, but for example, like if I'm a Gen Z and I'm fortunate to have a good manager who allows me to experiment and try this and try that, but maybe he's not going to be my boss for the rest of my life, but there are companies who continue to kind of remain in that creative zone year after year after year, right?
Mm.
So, like, how do you sustain it, right? What are the ways, just some ways in which companies can?
I'm smiling because that's going to be the subject of, I think, our next podcast, because my partner, Dr. Jaya Grant's PhD was on sustainable innovation. So, I
Sure.
don't know if I
Yeah.
want to get into another model, but her whole research in our second book, The Innovation Race, is on actually sustainable innovation, because you're absolutely right. It's, we read about all these breakthrough companies, and we've got a
Yeah.
fascination with Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, who are,
Yeah.
you know, total outliers and a little bit crazy in what they do,
Yeah.
but they fumble through because they've got billions of dollars to burn. But the rest
Yeah.
of us, and that's called survivorship bias.
Yeah.
Jaya's research actually looked at 60 years of innovation companies, and she interviewed, I think, over 100 innovation offices globally and over 1,000 people on what makes sustainable long-term innovation. And I'll just quickly go into just the
Yeah.
top level of her model. Typically
Please.
with innovation, creative thinking, we always worship and talk about the explorers and the people that want to, go out and have visionary and do all these big things. And that's what we see a lot on the media. As I said, we love to hear about Mark Zuckerberg and his metaverse, where he's just gone off into another world of exploring and coming up with great ideas. But we don't acknowledge that to be, and that's not sustainable, because it just goes off into chaos, and too much freedom goes a bit crazy. For sustainable innovation to happen, you need on an equal side of tension, and it's called the paradox theory, where it's actually a tension of a company between those that want to explore and those that want to preserve. And that tension, that dual leadership or ambidexterity between the exploring and the preserving, is what will pull a company into sustainable long-term innovation, because they're both pulling on each other to make sure they're moving forward. And if you think about it, it's a racing car or a racing track. On one side of the road is the exploring side, on the other side is the preserving side. And a good racing car driver will always use the racing line. They might come right over here and then move right over to this side of the road.
Yeah.
And so sustainable innovation is about creating a culture of leadership that allows people to hold in tension the competing demands of exploring and preserving. Too much exploring, you go off into just chaos. Too much preserving, you don't innovate. We know what happens if you don't innovate, you get left behind. But right now, the media is fascinated with over-exploring companies, and they'll come and go. I mean, if we were here 10 years ago, we might be talking about the wonderful innovation of Borders Books and Wang Computers and some of the other companies that are now, or MySpace, the companies that were leading the pack but are not. So we've really wanted to look at what innovation, we call it the innovation race, who wins, who loses, who gets eliminated. But let's look at it over decades, if not centuries, rather than just the latest news in the media. So as I said, it's taking us off on a little bit of a different model, but you're talking about sustainable. It really is the companies that take the innovation leadership seriously. They don't just jump straight to the tools, and they take the culture of innovation and the culture of a company seriously. How long does it take to work in a company with this? Look, it's hard to say. I just worked with another large automotive tech company that their whole staff or their whole high potentials had done creative and design thinking, and the C-level team hadn't. So they kept hearing about agile and prototyping and all these buzzwords, but felt a bit inferior. And so they asked if I could come and run a 2-day workshop with them, where we did the Who Killed Creativity followed by the design thinking. And that was really successful. It was just to bring them up to speed. So I think the danger is that I think all levels of companies need to go through it so they can speak the same language. There's no use just doing it with one level and the top level not understanding it, because there's nothing worse if the middle managers learn all about it and then go to present something to the senior managers and are using words that the senior managers, or models or understanding that senior managers know nothing about. So it definitely has to permeate right through the culture of the company, not just one layer.